In today's video, I'll be showing you how to install a modern dash cam, backup cam, and bumper camera in your car, truck, or van. Now let's take a look at the dash cam that we're installing in this video. This is the Wolfbox G900 TriPro. There are a ton of dash cam options on the market, and a lot will be very similar, but this has a ton of features that set it apart. This camera actually has 3 cameras, including a front-facing dash cam, a backup camera, which also acts as a rear-facing dash cam, and finally a bumper camera. All right, here we go. Opening this thing up. This will be your monitor, so on here you'll be able to see your front-facing camera, your backup camera, and your bumper cam. Moving on here, we have a mount that would work as a bumper mount for your rear-facing or front-facing camera. Then we have a user's manual with some information. If you're installing a different camera than the one in this video, I'd highly recommend you look at your user's manual. And either way, it's always a good idea to double check. Next up, we have another box of goodies. In here, we have some zip ties, the front or rear-facing camera. I'll figure out which shortly here. A trim removal tool to help cleanly install your kit, a GPS unit which will be used to track speed, and it will also detect if you get into an accident or if you swerve hard, and it will automatically save your clips. And next up, we have a few clips to help with mounting, and we have some mount options for the cameras. In this box here, we have our power cord and our rubber straps to mount the dash cam to our rear view mirror. This is the power cord. This will just plug into a cigarette lighter. At the end of this video, I will also show you how to hardwire in your dash cam so it's cleanly installed and also records when the vehicle's parked. But again, we'll do that later on in this video. In this final box here, we have a cable for the rear camera and the front bumper camera. Now, there is a lot of wiring here. This is going to be your bumper camera, and this is going to be your rear camera. Finally, depending on which kit you get, you also might get a hardwire kit and a longer rear view camera cable if you have a really big vehicle. After seeing all that stuff in the box, you might be a little bit nervous about installing your kit in your vehicle. But don't worry, these things are actually pretty simple to install, and I'm going to walk you through the entire process. I'm also going to do this in stages from easiest with a very basic install to a little bit more difficult but still not hard, which will be a full factory level install where the dash cam looks super clean and is hardwired in. Let's start with a very basic installation. For the very first stage of installation, we're going to take our mirror screen right here and attach it over our existing backup camera. Now, this does have the front-facing camera right here on the front, so you want to make sure that that camera clears the mirror when you mount it up there. I will note that there are versions of dash cams that don't have this camera on here, so you can mount them anywhere, but again, this one does right there, and it's actually very nice and convenient. To install this, you're going to use the rubber straps that are included with the kit, and those are going to go on these hooks that are on this backup screen right here and around that mirror. And now we could go ahead and place this over our existing mirror and use these rubber straps right here to hold that in place. And you want to make sure you do both sides here. The next thing we're going to do is get power to the camera. And this time we're just going to use the cigarette lighter port, plug it into the port in the van, and plug it into the device, and it should be able to power up. I will note that this right here has a USB on the charger, which is kind of nice, so you could still run something else out of this port. Next, you could plug your power in up here. There is a spot labeled power for that. And my car actually has power to the cigarette lighter port before you actually turn the key on. So right now this camera is on and recording. Since it's on and recording, I'll remove the protective plastic there just so it's clear for the rest of the video. The camera on the back, where you can see my hand right there, does rotate on a pivot, so you can move that up and down. I'm moving the mirror a bit, but you can see that the camera is also moving up and down to set that up to point it exactly where you want. At this point, if this is all you're looking for, just a front-facing camera, you're actually all set with your installation if you're not going to hardwire it. If you are all set here, you could go through your settings and just play around with things to customize this camera. Let me know down in the comments below if you want me to do a full settings video on this camera. Right off the bat, I will note that this camera has a very responsive touchscreen and it looks very, very good. All right, next thing we're gonna do is install the reverse camera here. To do that, we're gonna start by running a wire from the Wolfbox unit to the back of the van. So I got my wire here. I'm planning on running this out of the unit and then along where the headliner starts up here. So right now I'm just roughing in the wire length so I know that this cable is gonna be long enough. All right, so it looks like I'm gonna have plenty of length on this cable because I'm gonna run this again along the headliner area there. And then I'm gonna run this over along the top and then straight out of the door seal, which is right here to mount the camera up top in the center rear of the van. I'm happy with that. Now what I'm gonna do is turn my unit back on and plug in the rear view camera just so we could confirm that it's working, and then we could actually set this up. And you're probably wondering what this red wire is for right here. I'll get to that after, but this will actually trigger your reverse camera to come on your unit. And later in this video, I'll show you how to wire this in. For right now, we could go ahead and plug our Wolfbox camera back into power. As you can see, there it is turning on. Rear camera takes 8 seconds to boot up, but is not currently detected. That makes sense because it's here in my hand. So I'm gonna click confirm, and I'm gonna angle this down just to make it easier. And up top here, there's a slot that says rear on the camera. I'm gonna take the cable, plug it into that rear slot. That'll click in nice and solid like that. And then we can go ahead and take our camera and plug this in. And as you can see, now we're in split screen mode. I'm smiling for the camera. And yeah, we're all set up with the backup camera. So I'm confirming that that works. And now we could go ahead and get to mounting this. So what I'm gonna do now is take my camera and tape it up here on the van so I can see the different locations. And once I get it where I actually like it, then we could go ahead and actually mount this on there. So guys, right now I have that taped right up there near the third brake light. Personally, I really like that location because it looks down behind the van and you get a really nice large view. So that's very likely where I'm gonna put it. However, if you want, you also could mount it down there on the rear bumper, which could help you if you're lining up trailers and stuff. I think I would prefer the view up there, so that's where I'm gonna leave it. But that's another good option. Now, I'm gonna show you guys how to run the wiring after I get that actually mounted up, but I'm gonna run that right there, run this along the seal here and then into the headliner, and that way I could cleanly install it front to back so you won't even really know that that wire's there. All right, so this is what we look like on the display screen. As you can see, that's flipped. So if I go in here, I could actually change my settings, and I'm gonna go ahead and do flip. So the rear, we're gonna turn that on. And I think we need to mirror it as well. We're gonna do off. Now let's see if this looks right. And yeah, so that's exactly what the back should look like. That's all set up good. Again, you could adjust that view. I think I'm actually gonna angle that a little bit down when I actually mount it. But let me show you how to mount that thing up right now. To get this to a rough angle that you want it to stay at, go ahead and position the angle here by moving this mount, and then you could tighten down this screw right here until it makes good contact. That'll prevent the camera from moving up and down and basically hard mount it. And now we could get ready to mount up the camera. There are two options. You could either use double-sided tape or screws. In my case, I don't want to screw into my vehicle, so I'm just going to use the double-sided tape. The key here is to prep all your surfaces by cleaning them so it sticks really, really well and doesn't fall off. You could also use the double-sided tape and your screws, but again, I don't want to drill into my vehicle and put a potential spot for leaks. To clean this, I have some isopropyl alcohol. To use this, I'm just going to put some on a paper towel and wipe down the surface that double-sided tape is going to stick to. And now we'll let that dry off. While that's drying, I'm going to do the same thing up here where I'm going to mount that camera. And as you can see, this paper towel is pretty dirty now, which means that there was a bunch of stuff on here that could have prevented that camera from sticking well. Now I'm going to flip this camera over and get ready to apply my two-way tape. I'm gonna put this side on the camera, just like that. Could have been more centered, but it is on there. All right, so now I got my backup camera here with the wire unplugged, just so it's a little bit easier to work with. And I'm gonna center this up using the center of my third brake light here. And I removed the backing, and now we can just press this on right in the center of the vehicle. And you do want to make sure this is pressed on there really well so you don't lose it. And yeah, there's our backup camera installed on the van. All right, so as I mentioned earlier, there is also a red wire here. This is to tap into the reverse light system. So when you put it in reverse, the camera automatically goes into reverse. I'm actually not going to do that on this installation, but I'm going to show you a section of a video from the last dash cam that I installed so you can learn how if you choose to do that. If your camera has the option to display backup lines to assist you when reversing, you'll need a way to tell the camera that you're putting it in reverse. Commonly, you'll need to tap into your reverse light circuit, which will send a signal to the camera and put the reverse lines up for you. To do this, you could either pull your taillight and find your reverse light and tap into the power wire that's going to it with something like a T-splice, or you could find the wire within the vehicle, which is what I ended up doing here. To use one of these quick T-splices, all you need to do is clamp it over the wire and then put the spade terminal on the signal wire and plug it in. Then you're good to go. Here you could see when I put the car in reverse, it automatically goes to the backup camera and puts the lines up. So to run that wire, we need to find a path into the vehicle. In my case, I'm going to run it right where my thumb is, right there, where the seal is, because that's where the doors come together and there shouldn't be too much pressure there. And then you're going to have to use your trim removal tool to move some of the trim around a little bit, which would be easier with two hands. But as you can see, you can move some of your trim, and this will allow you to hide the wire in those gaps there. All right, so what I'm going to do now is feed this cable into this gap here. I'm going to start by pulling this down and out of the way and getting that in there. And then after, I'm going to tuck all the rest of the cable length in there so it'll look nice and clean. I'm going ahead and using my pry tool here to create a bigger gap that I could just slide the cable right into. And I'm actually going to get a second tool to help tuck this right into that gap. All right, that was the money shot right there. That worked really well. All right, so what I ended up doing there was actually getting the wire in a little bit and sort of chasing it with the tucking tool to force it into that gap. Now I'm gonna go down here, create a gap between these two panels and transition that wire so it goes that way. When you're doing this, you wanna make sure that you're not pinching that wire super hard because then you could damage it. But right now, this is working really well, so I'm gonna just keep carefully working my way to the front. We're gonna go into this gap right there. And then I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna chase this down this way and just follow this right through this whole trim piece here. All right, and just like that, that's nicely hidden there. Here is something I wanted to show you guys. So here, I'm gonna tuck this wire behind this factory piece of trim. And to do that, I'm just gonna pull this down out of the way, feed my wire in, and as you can see, it really just drops into place and is gonna stay in place and also nice and hidden here. All right, now back up here at the front of the vehicle, I'm pushing this wire into this door seal here. If you pull the door seal down just a little bit, you could get that wire nicely nested in there. You do want to make sure you don't disrupt these too much by pulling them down and out of place, because that's how you could get leaks. So be careful during this install, but this is what I would do. It works really well. All right, so now we're getting to the front of the vehicle. I plugged my wire into my Wolfbox device, and we have all this extra wire here. So you're gonna wanna find somewhere to hide that wire. In my case, I'm gonna drop that wire behind this trim piece right here. And to do that, I'm just gonna neatly coil this up, fairly neatly. I mean, it's not going to be seen, but you don't want it super messy. We're going to coil that up and just hide that down here behind this trim piece. All right, and just like that, that's nice and hidden. I'm going to run this wire up behind the headliner up here, and then this down into this trim right there. And just like that, that wire has disappeared from the front of the vehicle to the rear. All right, guys, so this install is going well. Like I just said, we got the reverse camera all hidden here, and I am super happy with that. I'm having fun with this install. It's going nice. These kits are really easy to install, and yeah, it's a satisfying project. The next thing we could do is install our GPS unit. This will allow us to see speed up there, and again, it will also automatically save video if there's high G-force maneuvers or if you get into a crash that triggers the G-force sensor. There's settings in there to dial that in. I'm not going to get into that too much in this video, but all you need to know with the GPS is one side says up, so you could either stick that somewhere on the vehicle, or what I'm going to do is actually tuck this up here behind the headliner. So this side right here is the side that says up. I'm going to go ahead, tuck that up there so that's up, and then we're going to plug this in right here. All right, watch over here when I plug that in. As you can see, the speedometer comes up. With that plugged in, the speedometer's there. I'm gonna go ahead and tuck this wire up there. All right, so now we've got everything installed minus the hardwire kit, which again, we're gonna do at the end of this video. And it's time to run the bumper camera. Now, this is what sets the 900 TriPro apart from the other models that Wolfbox offers. And what we need to do is run our wiring through the firewall of the vehicle into the engine bay. Now, this could vary greatly for some vehicles. If you have a Chevy Express, this is actually really easy. I just popped one grommet out of the firewall, which I'll show you, and I could run this cable right through. What you want to look for is an unused rubber grommet, which means a rubber plug, basically, in your firewall that you could pop out of place and run wiring through. All right, guys, so again, I was looking underneath my vehicle in the footwell area, looking for spots to run that through. And on this vehicle up there is where I popped out that grommet. So the grommet itself is this piece right here, and it's just a rubber plug in the firewall. If you get lucky, some vehicles like this one had this just in place already, and I was able to pop it out, which gives me, again, access to run a wire straight through. So looking at the wiring that Wolfbox gives you, there's this part which is wrapped in a wire loom. So that's going to be a little bit more protected. So that's the part that's going to go in the engine bay. And then there's this part here, which is unprotected. And this also has the end that's going to plug into the Wolfbox unit. And that looks like this. It basically looks like a headphone cord. So what I'm going to do now is actually run this from the engine bay so we could get the smaller part of this running through that hole in the firewall. And now I could come down here and pull this through. All right, now we got this here. This is going to be actually probably okay to just run into the firewall. If you're worried about it, you could put some caulk on there just to seal it off for good. I might do that in the future, but for right now, I'm just going to plug this right into the firewall. All right, guys, and it is a little bit hard to see here, but if you look in the very back, you could see that that wire is coming through that grommet, and it's fairly sealed off, so I'm pretty happy with that. Next, what we need to do is run this wire to where we want the camera. On my vehicle, I'm going to put my camera right there, right in the front bumper, so it extends out and I know exactly where the front of my vehicle is. And to do that, I'm going to route the wiring along the outside of the engine bay, and then through the grill, through one of these holes right here. Keep it away from anything that gets hot. I am going to zip tie this up to keep all that wiring towards the very outside of the engine bay and keep it out of harm's way. I think I'm actually going to take this a step further and inset this into the grill. All right, that's really smooth. Now this mount here, which is going to go this way, could sit on there perfectly flat. All right, I did a much better job centering that up this time. All right, guys, so now we got that dash cam all installed right here. It looks really factory in this location, but even if it were on a bumper, it would look really good. Now I'm just gonna tidy up that wiring back there, and then we could plug in this camera, and we'll have full functionality with this kit. All right, guys, so now I got that thing all installed. You'll see up here that there's now 3 screens, 3 little separate sections on the screen, I should say. So again, we have our normal dash cam, our bumper cam, and our rear cam up there. I did run the wires, so they're all nice and hidden. And the most important thing that I want to stress with running wires under near your pedals is get them out of the way, keep them out of the way, and secure them so they can't get stuck in anything down by your feet. And yeah, you'll be in good shape. And now it's finally time, let's hardwire in this dash cam. All right, so to hardwire in a dash cam, it's also not too difficult, but there is a few things you need to know. One is Wolfbox can supply a hardwire kit. Depending on which setup you get, you could get this kit with your camera or you could buy it separately. With a hardwire kit, your dash cam will automatically turn on when you start up your vehicle, and it will also not drain the battery when you turn your vehicle off. To install one of these kits, there are 3 wires that you need to run, and then it's just got the normal USB-C plug right here. You need to run a constant power wire, which is this one right here, labeled B+. This is going to be a power source that's on all the time, whether the key is on or not. Next, you'll have to find an accessory power source, which is this right here. This is one that is only on when the key is on, and when your key is off, there's no power to that source. And then the final thing is to run a ground, which is this black wire right here, which I actually already have installed under this bolt right there. To do that, I just loosen that up and sandwich that wire underneath that bolt. One of the easiest ways to source switched and constant power is to use a fuse tap. Now these are actually included with the hardwire kit, which is super nice. And what this does is allow you to add an additional circuit off of a location in your fuse box. Now, there are some accessories in your vehicle that when you turn your key on, they'll come on, and when you turn your key off, it will come off. Some examples of that is sometimes some lights in the vehicle, the radio, and in my case, I ended up using the slot for the HVAC controls, which is the blower motor and stuff for your vents. So I use that for my switched power, and then for my constant power, I use the interior cabin lighting, because on this van, whether the key is on or off, you could use that power to turn on the lights. So I knew that that was a constant power source because it didn't matter if the key was on or off, it would always have power. So the way these fuse taps work is you'll pull out your existing fuse out of a slot that's either constant or accessory power, and then you'll plug this end right here in. Then you'll move that fuse that was plugged into the slot originally and put it right here in that lower location on the fuse tap. These came already with 15 amp fuses up top, so you're just going to leave that right there. I'll show you me plugging in the taps into my fuse block in this van. Alright, so now to install our fuse taps. This one is the constant power source, so again, I'm going to plug this into my cabin lighting kit. And this one here is my accessory power source, so I'm going to plug that into my HVAC control system. And again, for the ground, you're going to want to run this somewhere that's metal that attaches to the body of the vehicle. In my case, I went right underneath this stud right here. That was for the fuse block. The last thing to do is just to plug in your camera and to plug in the terminals on the fuse tap and the wiring kit that Wolfbox supplies. At this point, you'll want to cycle your vehicle on and off to make sure it's working correctly, and you also need to enable parking mode on your dash cam's options. If you have this wired wrong, this option won't come up, so this is actually a good check to see if you did it right. Also, if you're having trouble finding switched and constant power, you could look up wiring diagrams for your specific vehicle online, or you could use a multimeter to test the fuses, and there are a bunch of good videos on YouTube for that to figure out how to do that. Alright guys, so now you can see I'm in the vehicle and the dash cam appears off. It's actually in time-lapse mode, and if I go down here, put my key in the ignition, and start the vehicle up, this thing's going to come right on. And you can see it says exit time-lapse recording mode, and now it's just the normal recording mode. Let me show you here the parking mode. So this is your parking mode, and here you could choose if you want a G-force trigger warning, so if your car gets hit it would turn on, or you could do 24, 48, 12-hour recording there. Alright guys, so driving around here, it's a little bit dark and rainy, and as you can see, the footage on this dash cam still looks really, really good. On the display, everything looks great, and then I'll also show you guys footage on the screen right now straight off of the dash cam. The front-facing camera on here is 4K, the rear-facing camera is 2.5K, and the bumper cam is 1080p. And all of these cameras do record in HDR mode, which is high dynamic range, which means that if it's really bright in one area and really dark on the other, it'll try to balance that out and you get a better overall image. Also, I'm going to show you some footage in a minute here of when it's darker at night so we can see how this camera performs, but it should perform really well. I'll also note that this screen here has the option to change between the displays. All you have to do is press that button right there. Personally, I prefer the split screen mode, so you get the wider display of every camera. So that's what I'm gonna go ahead and leave this in. But again, it's really nice to have that option, and in all the individual modes, you could click and drag to adjust the view to where you really want it. All right guys, so it is plenty dark out now and the camera's looking really good on screen. It's also rainy, so you might see a few drops of rain on the screen, but overall, it's looking great. I got the footage overlaid right now. Let us know down in the comment section below what you think of how everything looks, and let me know if there's any other videos you want to see on this camera, including a review, a full settings guide, or anything like that. Like this video if you've enjoyed it, subscribe for more, and I hope you stick around for the next one. Take care.